So, if you've tried the traditional method of personal development and you've read a lot of books, you've done a lot of meditation, you've watched a lot of videos on YouTube, and you've gotten some sort of information, maybe some benefit, but internally you're still the same. There really hasn't been an external shift in your external environment, and there's a lot of things that you wish could change you could change about your life, but you actually aren't able to. So then it leads you down this path of frustration, thinking something is wrong with you, thinking that it's hopeless, that there's nothing you can do to change, and that you should just accept your position as is, and you're just out of luck, and there's not really much things you can do. This definitely was a situation that I personally was in, and I'm about to share with you how I was able to break through and how to actually create real change and what's actually stopping you from creating that real change you want. So, the approach you're currently taking, where you're absorbing just a bunch of different information, trying to figure out like, what can I do to change my mind? What can I do to change my frame? The reason why nothing is working is because you're trying to attack it from a logical and analytical perspective when there's not any change that can be facilitated, because actual problem is the internal beliefs that you have and the emotions that surrounding it. So you cannot actually create real emotional and psychological change if you've completely amputated your emotions. This was me for the longest time. I would just like read like hundreds of books, book after book after book, video after video, article after article, just trying to fix my brain so I could think the right way. When in fact, I was just collecting information without actually doing the real internal work to actually heal what's going on, which was actually the foundation of the problem that I had. So I'm trying to fix myself for being broken when in fact there was nothing really wrong with me. I just needed to change the beliefs about myself. And in doing that, I thought by reading books and having enough knowledge about the actual structure of the mind would do it for me without actually looking at the deep emotional and psychological pain that I was feeling and addressing that. So, what a lot of us will do is we'll actually cut off our emotions. So, we'll have a lot of shame around feeling sadness, anger, fear, or any of these emotions. So, we'll actually cut them off and we'll try and circumvent it. So, that's where a lot of addictions come from. You just try and circumvent certain emotions, and you actually have an addiction to certain emotions which cause you to have these addictions. And the reason why we cut off our emotions is because, like I said, we either feel shame or we don't feel safe to experience it. So growing up, if we were to cry, we might feel guilty for it. We might feel, like not safe to actually express our emotions. We might be guilt tripped for it, saying like, "Oh, you have it lucky. Oh, stop doing this or stop crying. Go to your room until you're done crying." And then we actually reject those parts of ourselves. But the problem is, we're human beings, and you can't just amputate part of ourselves, because that's just gonna make you like a half human, and you're just going to be robotic, and you're just going to be ran off your traumas and your programming. So, in order to actually fix this, you need to integrate your emotions. Now, let me be clear, this doesn't mean you become some emotional sissy and start trauma dumping on everybody and just not having any sort of resilience or toughness. But with that being said, you need to integrate these emotions and you need to deal with them. Now, simply just feeling your emotions, I don't believe is going to be enough. You need to unravel and have awareness about the underlying programs and beliefs that are running you. Once you dissolve these, then the emotions will naturally come up, and then you can process those. And you just need yourself to process those. You don't need to trauma dump and info dump on everybody. Also, another consequence of cutting off your bad emotions, which they're not even bad, they're just, you can call them darker emotions. When you cut off the darker emotions, you also cut off the lighter emotions. So, commonly, what I see with my clients is that not all of them are like this, but some of them have really decided that they're going to amputate their emotions and they no longer want anything to do with them. And what they end up telling me is like, I feel absolutely nothing. Like it's a void. They might feel anxiety and depression, and sometimes they even cut off the anxiety, so they just feel depression. They feel depressed and apathetic, and sometimes shame and guilt as well. But sometimes they even amputate that by living in a fantasy. So what I do is I help address the negative programming that they have around the emotions. This way they no longer have to be a half human, and then they can actually address that part of themselves and start to integrate it back into their own psyche and into their own personality. This way they can become a full human, and this way they can start to relate with people, because people relate based off emotions and even like your imperfections. Like if someone's perfect, no one can relate to you because nobody is perfect. So you trying to pretend like you're perfect and like nothing affects you, and you're like this complete god of a man. Like no one can relate to that, and all your relationships are going to be very very surface level. There's not going to be any trust in them, and you're going to feel very alone, even if that means having a lot of people around you. Now, as far as I can tell, with people like this, the best way to go through it is to first integrate. Well, actually, it's first to remove the shame around it and the guilt around it, but also is anger. Because a lot of people can feel anger, and anger is actually, it's almost glorified. Like I told this person off or I showed him. So there's not a lot of too much shame around anger for some people. So usually my first approach is, like I said, dissolve whatever is, getting in the way, like shame and guilt, and then also allowing them to access their emotions first through anger, because there's a lot of shit that happened to them to get to this point. And once they can feel that anger, that will be the access point or the doorway to start to feel other emotions. And then they can start to process it, start to heal, start to grow, and start to integrate the parts of their psyche that they've completely rejected and thrown away just so they could survive and just so they can fit into their family, because of childhood it wasn't accepted or whatever. And once you start to do this, this is where insane healing occurs, and you could get results so rapidly that years and years of therapy, like myself and my clients have experienced where nothing worked, you can, compact that into such a short amount of time comparatively to create massive shifts and massive healing in your psyche and in your emotions. This will also allow you to relate to people more and just have much better relationships and be more real and authentic, and actually start to bring in people that care about you and not people that like just don't really care that much about you, disregard you. They say they do maybe, but like deep down, they don't. And you just start to clean up your life and start to live an authentic life, and you start to feel a lot more fulfilled, expressive, loving, and it also opens up your positive emotions as well. So we all need to so in order to do this, we need to do it through authenticity, and in order to be authentic, we need to integrate the parts of ourselves that we've thrown away for the longest time. And the reason why all of this other BS that you've tried before, the emotional stuff, hasn't been working is because the brain is wired through emotions. We learn through emotions, we experience things through emotions. If you felt back in the day, our ancestors, like if we seen somebody die through a tiger, that's gonna bring up a lot of fear. Or we heard a story, it's gonna bring up a lot of fear. That fear links up to that story and that emotion, and it's like, oh, okay, stay away from tigers, or and then vice versa. There's a lot of pleasure in bonding with the group. There's a lot more safety, so you're gonna do more of that. So it's a lot of um, you use memory or use emotion to sink in memory. If there's no emotion involved, memory becomes very hard. That's why a lot of people who are highly traumatized, they cut off their emotions at a very young age, and they don't have a lot of childhood memories. It's just all a blur. They just can't really remember much. And that's exactly why. So, if this is you, someone who's just analyzing, reading books, doing all these things, you can start to integrate your emotions, dissolve the underlying mechanisms that's causing it, and stop rejecting your humanness. And this way you can integrate and be fully human. Now, if this is something you want some help with, you can shoot me a DM on my Instagram. It's the same as my YouTube page. You can go ahead, look at that, message me on there, and I can go ahead and help you out, see if you're a good fit. And hopefully this video was helpful. If it was, leave a like and follow for more content like this.